Welcome. Thanks for joining the session. My name is Madeni, and I work as an identity and access management specialist here at Oracle. And today we will be looking at how Oracle's risk-based adaptive multi-factor authentication can help you strengthen the security posture of your web applications. Okay. Before we proceed, let's spend a couple of seconds to read the safe harbor statement, which basically states the discussion that we will have today is for informational purposes only. Okay, so I'll give a couple of seconds here and then move on to start the discussion, right? All right, so moving on. So why understanding the context of an authentication attempt is important in today's world? Now, what has happened in the recent couple of years is that the organization's perimeter has spread beyond the firewall that we have had traditionally, right? So users are logging into applications from different networks, from different geographical locations, from different devices, and at different, hours. So along with it comes a very high security risk of you not knowing exactly if an authentication attempt is a genuine attempt from a real user, or if it is being made by a set of credentials that has been probably stolen or hacked, right? So what comes in handy in this situation is analyzing the context of an authentication attempt, right? So when someone is trying to log into your applications, it is, along with the credentials, of course, and whatever you are using to authenticate the user with, along with that, it is also very important to understand the context of the authentication attempt, right? So by context, what I mean is, the information that is available at the time when the user is trying to log in, right? So when someone is trying to log into an application, they will definitely be using either a browser or a mobile app, right? Or maybe, a particular device to log in. They will also be logged in from a network, from an IP address, from a particular geographic location, right? Things like that. So this information that we have available at the time when someone is trying to log in is basically the context of authentication, right? So, and if we are able to analyze this contextual information that is available when someone is trying to log in, over a certain period of time, what we will have is we will have established a certain set of pattern, right? So a user, for example, generally logs in at around 9 a.m. in the morning every day, right? Or a user, uses a particular device to log in for a majority of the time that he or she is online, right? So things like that. So this is analyzing this data and kind of identifying a deviation from a standard behavior, or something that is unusual. If we can preempt those kind of things, it is very important. I mean, it is very easy for us to identify if an authentication request is a genuine one, or using a set of credentials that has been leaked or hacked or stolen, right? So this is where the solution that I'll be talking about comes in our product portfolio, basically, right? So Oracle Identity and Access Management has been there in the industry for a long time now, okay? And we have had 3 very successful and very long-standing technologies in our product portfolio, which are basically Oracle Access Management, Identity Governance, and Directory Services, right? Access management is to take care of all your authentication authorization requirements, single sign-on, multi-factor authentication, so on and so forth. Identity governance for identity management and governance, and directory services is basically an LDAP service, LDAP directory service that is offered, right? Now, in the recent couple of years, we have enhanced the capabilities of our traditional identity and access management portfolio with few additional services, right? So these are microservices that have been released in the recent couple of years, and they serve different purposes, right? So identity role intelligence is to help identity governance with advanced role management stuff. Advanced authentication adds on to Oracle Access Management to provide multi-factor authentication over modern channels like FIDO2 or YubiKey, and many other different channels, right? Then we have Radius agent coming in, which basically takes care of providing multi-factor authentication when when someone is trying to log into a database or a VPN server using a client which is Radius compatible, right? But our focus area for today is the one that we see at the end here, Oracle Adaptive Risk Management. Okay, so this is again a microservice that can be augmented with Oracle Access Management and Oracle Advanced Authentication to achieve a certain kind of features, right? So what are those? Let's have a look. So as I said at the beginning, analyzing the context of an authentication or any kind of a transaction is very important these days to keep a check on your data security and the security of an overall application, right? And Oracle Adaptive Risk Management microservice does exactly that. Okay, so what it offers is it offers a policy model, right? So it offers you the capability to design policies to analyze the data that is available when a user is trying to log into your application, right? So using Oracle Adaptive Risk Management Service capabilities, you can design policies to analyze the device data of an user, the geographical data associated with the user's authentication attempt, right? Or session information, device velocity, like speed at which the device is traveling, things like that, right? So in Oracle Adaptive Risk Management, OARM, you get the option to design these policies, and according to the policies, Oracle Adaptive Risk Management will either allow a user, if everything is okay, if something seems to be fishy, Oracle Adaptive Risk Management will block that attempt. And for certain kind of scenarios where you need additional, factor of authentication from the user, OARM will alleviate that authentication attempt to incorporate an additional factor, right? That you choose to use. So far I have been talking about the contextual data which is available at the time of authentication. OARM, along with analyzing the context of an authentication attempt, you can also integrate OARM with your application directly to monitor and analyze and evaluate transactions happening within your application. Okay, so at the time of authentication, yes, OARM can do all the analysis of the contextual data that we have. Once the user has logged into an application, you can all use OARM to even analyze the transactions happening inside an application. Okay, so a typical use case would be like this, right? So this slide basically sums up what OARM can do, Oracle Adaptive Risk Management can do for you. Okay, so in this situation, what we have is basically, let's say a bank which is trying to enhance the security of their personal banking services, right? So how OARM, Advanced Authentication and Access Management can help in this regard is, if you look at this diagram here, what basically happens is when a user is trying to log in, right? So Oracle Access Management and Adaptive Risk Management and Advanced Authentication, all these services are already integrated with the application that the bank has, right? So when a user is trying to log in, Oracle Access Management, Adaptive Risk Management, Advanced Authentication, they will preempt the user's authentication attempt, do all the authentication and authorization. OARM will do the contextual analysis of the authentication attempt and see if the user is trying to log in from a device which is already known, or if the authentication attempt is kind of deviating from the user's traditional behavior, right? Depending on the outcome of those analysis, OARM will either elevate the challenge for the user, block the authentication attempt, or allow the user into the application. So once the user has logged in, let's say the user starts a transaction inside the banking application, let's say a money transfer transaction, and there also it is important to keep a check on the kind of transactions that a user is performing, right? So if the application is integrated with Oracle Adaptive Risk Management, what it can do is when someone is starting off with a transaction, it can analyze the transaction according to the policy that you have defined in OARM, right? So let's say you do not allow a certain kind of money transfer within, let's say, 30 minutes of time, right? So this kind of logical checks and balances you can implement into your transactions by integrating your application with Oracle Adaptive Risk Management. Okay, so Oracle Adaptive Risk Management provides a set of REST APIs that can be integrated with an application, and you can design your transaction analysis workflows by integrating your application with Oracle Adaptive Risk Management. Okay, so to sum it up, Oracle Adaptive Risk Management can provide analysis of data that is available when a user is trying to log in. It can analyze that data and then see if the user is deviating from a particular pattern of usage. And if the user is deviating, then it can further challenge the user, or it can block the authentication attempt, right? And once the user is logged in, again, inside the application, OARM can further help you by analyzing the transactions that a user is performing. Okay, you can design policies to monitor those transactions as well. So going back to the slide that talks about the capabilities of Oracle Adaptive Risk Management's microservice, it takes help from the Oracle Access Management and the Advanced Authentication Services, right? So you can integrate Oracle Access Management, Adaptive Risk Management, and Oracle Advanced Authentication Services all into one solution that will give you all the features that we have talked about so far. Okay, so we have a demonstration, a short demonstration now that will actually show you the capabilities of Oracle Adaptive Risk Management, right? So just to, there are a lot of policy items, there are a lot of items and conditions based on which you can design policies in Oracle Adaptive Risk Management. We'll have a look at that. But for the sake of keeping the session shorter, what I have done is I have taken an authentication situation and as well as a transactional analysis situation. Okay, and while seeing these, we'll go through what is available in OARM and what we can do with it, right? Okay, let's switch to the demonstration now. Okay, all right, so let's have a look at what we have in Oracle Adaptive Risk Management first. Okay, so let me log into the main console first. Okay, so in Adaptive Risk Management, as you can see, you have a way of designing rules for authentication events, user authentication rules, and you have these custom rules. I mean, in this demo environment, we have certain payment transactions created for demo purposes, but you can have your application transactions here. Whatever transactions you have, you can have that as a custom activity, and you can design rules for that. Okay, so let's have a look at what we have in user authentication. Okay, so before we see this service at play, let's have a look at what we have available in the service, right? So now, if I am going to create a rule for the application that is protected in this particular setup of Oracle Access Management and Adaptive Risk Management and Advanced Authentication. So while creating a rule, so what we will have is basically we have to select certain conditions, right? So as you can see, if I bring the list of conditions up here, I'll just go through this list slowly, and so that you can have a look at it. So you can see that there are a lot of conditions covering the location data, session data, different user attributes, different what kind of ISP the user is using, device profiling, right? And the location-based information. Then you have browser-based information, cookie-based information. So all this information can be analyzed, right? And also you can even make things even complicated by adding two or more of these conditions together. So you can actually attend a very complex use cases by combining multiple conditions here, right? So as you can see, under conditions, you have a lot of conditions available that can be used to analyze a user session, device, location, browsers, browser agent strings, things like that, right? So and also, I mean, it can also keep track of if the user is making too many failures, there are too many OTP failures, things like that. So what I'm trying to say is basically you have a very exhaustive list of conditions here that can be built into different rules that you have. Okay. So, and using this rule, once you have created a rule, you can enable it, and then this rule will be applied to any resource that is protected using this particular setup. Okay, so we have a couple of rules that has been created and enabled for this particular demo purposes. So what we have is a situation where, let's say, we're trying to analyze if a user is traveling too fast, right? So if a user is trying to log in from two IP addresses, two locations that are quite far apart, which is basically impossible to travel within, let's say, 5 minutes of time, and so on. So those kind of situations we are trying to analyze here, right? It's just for demo purposes. What I'm trying to give you an idea about is the capabilities of the solution, basically, right? So in this situation, what I'll be doing is basically I'll be logging in from two IP addresses, two different locations, basically, right? So, and when I'm logging into these, logging in from such two distant locations within a very short span of time, it will kind of trigger a challenge for me. Okay, so let's have a look at it. So we have the rule at place. So what we have done is we have a user who who is a part of a group called, let's say, privileged users here in this particular environment, right? So if I go to this particular group, this group of users, this is a user who is a part of this group called privileged users. Okay, it's just a group. So what we have done is, like, we have created a policy that this group of users, they're like, let's say, privileged users of the organization. They will not have to go through multi-factor authentication challenges while logging in, right? So that is a situation that we have created in this particular environment, in this demo environment, right? So for that, we have a rule again, right? We have created a rule for that. Okay, if the user belongs to this particular group, the privileged users group, then let the user into the application without the user having to log in, right? But what we also have here in this environment is that there is a check and balance, for velocity. So even if the user is part of a privileged group, if the user seems to be traveling too fast, right? If the user is trying to log in from devices that are quite far apart, they should still be preempted. They should still be checked, right? It could be a case that a user is, using a VPN service to log in from two different locations in a very short span of time, which is a genuine attempt. Or it could be a case of a stolen identity, right? So we need to, in order for us to enforce that, verify that, we have this policy. Okay, so having said that, let's have a look at it. So now what I'll be doing is I'll be using the other browser that I have, Chrome, to log in from two different IP addresses, two different locations. Okay, so first, let me log in from an IP address, which is probably, if I remember correctly, this is an IP address in Canada somewhere, right? I mean, the geolocation of this IP address is Canada. So now I have set this IP address. I'm using a Chrome extension to, switch IP addresses. client IP address basically. So now whenever I'll make a request to any website or a web application, it'll appear as if I'm trying to log in from this IP address. Okay. Now I'll try to log in to that application, an application which is protected by this setup of Oracle Adaptive Risk Management and Oracle Access Management. Okay. And see what happens when I'm trying to log in from Canada, right? Yeah, it's just the IP address that I have set myself for. So I go in here, I try to log into this application. I type in my credentials. Never expected, because I'm a privileged user in this particular login attempt. So I'm logged into the application without having to type in the second factor of authentication, right? Now, what I'll do is I'll log out, right? Okay. We'll close the browser and try this again, but from an address which is quite far from this IP address. Okay. So I changed my IP address to something which is quite far. I think this one is somewhere in Europe. Okay. Now I'll try to log into the same application once again. Okay. Let's see what happens here. Okay, I get the prompt again. And now I'm being asked for an OTP, right? So let me actually complete the flow by logging into my mailbox and getting the OTP. Okay, this is the user. And I'll click on my email OTP. I'll get the OTP to delivered to my email. And I'm going to refresh my mailbox. Okay, I have an OTP here. Get the OTP and put it there. Verify. And I'm logged in, right? So what has happened in the last couple of minutes is that first the user was trying to log in from somewhere in the Americas, so somewhere in Canada. And in the next couple of minutes, the user tried to log in from Europe, right? So obviously it's virtually impossible for someone to cross the Atlantic in such a short span of time. So what OARM did is OARM caught that anomalous behavior, right, and challenged the user further, right? And once the user has verified with all the challenge parameters, OARM let the user log in, right? Now, what we can do is we can actually have a look at what is happening by going into OARM again and monitoring the user sessions, right? So what is happening here is we have two sessions here, right? So first one is, you can see, it's a privileged user. The user has been allowed into the application. And here you can see all the data where the user is trying to access from, what is the type of device, what is the operating system, so on and so forth, right? Now, again, we go back there and we have a look at the second session. You can see this user authentication event was actually challenged, right? So, what was the policy evaluated? You can see all these things here, and if you choose to have a alert when you're creating the policy itself, you can choose if you want to have an alert generated. This again, you can put it into logs, and you can put use that log to customize it further, like send out an email or get all these alerts collected by a CM system. You can do all those things, right? So you have seen. So what basically has happened is it's just a demonstration of what it can do for you during authentication, right? And as I have said earlier, if we go to set of rules, as you can see, if we create a rule, we have a very long list of conditions available using which you can design this kind of rules to analyze authentication data, Okay, so in today's short session, I will not be going through any other conditions here, and you can give it a try. You can have a look at it. If you have any questions, you can definitely get back to us, and we will try to answer in the best possible way. Right. So that covers the first first part of the demonstration that I wanted to do today, which is how you can build logic into logic to analyze authentication context data available when a user is trying to log in. Right now, all right. So now moving on to the second part of the demonstration, which is basically I would be talking about how OARM can be used to analyze transactions. Okay, so for this part of the demonstration, what we have done is we have created sort of a dummy application, and we have integrated it with Oracle Adaptive Risk Management OARM that is installed, the one that you just saw, and that we have used to make a few calls which would look like simulate a situation where someone is trying to make a payment transaction. Okay, and how that can be analyzed using OARM, let's have a look at it. Okay, for that we will be using the command prompt for a bit, so please bear with me when I'm typing through things. Okay, so getting my shell up here. Let me just first log into the server. Okay, so right, I'm logged into the server where we have done the integration. So let me go to the location. Okay, so now again the same logic. What we have designed is like the logic that we have designed here is that if a user does a payment transaction of 500, the amount should be more than 500 or more. The user should not be able to do 2 transactions within 10 minutes. Okay, that is the logic. Okay, and for that we do not have a this is a dummy application, so we do not have a GUI for that. What we have is instead is like a few HTTP calls that would replicate this particular logic. Okay, again, while doing that, you can have a look. We have a couple of data files here, so we'll put the data into here and we'll make the calls to the OARM REST APIs so that this data can be analyzed. Right, so this basically is nothing but the transactional data from the application. Okay, first, yes, we need to have the correct user data there. Okay, so we have the data available here in this station file. So we already have the user ID updated there and all the other necessary information that is required to make this REST API call. So what we'll do first is that we will first try to establish a user session. Okay, we'll start a session first. That is how an application flow will go, right? So for that we have a call already. All right, so we have this call. We'll make this call. So what I'm doing here is that I'm providing my user data, right? And I'm trying to create a session first with OARM, right? Once the session has been created, then we will provide the transaction and ask OARM to do the analysis. All right. So I'm going to create a session. So I have a session created here, and I get a request ID. Okay. So this is the request ID using which the next set of communications will happen. Now that we have an established session using the user information that we have provided, now what we'll do is we'll try to initiate a transaction. Okay. So while initiating the transaction, we will have to provide the session ID basically. So the request ID, sorry. So I have copied the request ID from the last command and type in the request ID there. So I have updated the transaction data file with the request ID. Okay, so now I'm going to make a call stating that I'm going to initiate a transaction in the application. Okay, wait, let me just give you a bit of a more look into this file. So what it says is basically, so you can see I have provided the request ID and the type of transaction, payment transaction. Okay, and the amount is, which is like more than 500, right? So it's 550. So with this information, I'm trying to initiate a payment transaction. What I'm going to do is I'm going to call the transaction data processing request for OARM, and this is the call. So here, once I make this call, what will happen is that, okay, yes, this transaction, we can start this transaction, but and for this transaction, here is the transaction ID. Okay, now what I need to do is, what the application needs to do is that it needs to ask OARM to evaluate this transaction before it can go through. We have all the data for the transaction already provided by the user. Okay, and we have a transaction ID now. We need to ask OARM to evaluate this transaction. For that, again, I'll put the ID here into the evaluate transaction JSON file here, right? So I think this is the correct transaction ID. Yeah. And now I'm going to make a call to OARM, the application. The application, right? The application is going to make the call to OARM saying that, you know what, this user is trying to initiate a transaction. This is all the data that is related to the transaction. And here is the transaction ID. Please evaluate this transaction and see if it should go through or not according to the policies that we have defined, right? So this call is being made by the application to OARM. So once this has been done, so you can see the result is allow. So OARM says, yes, this is okay. This user has not made any such transactions of more than 500 in the last 10 minutes or so. So you can let this transaction go through. Now what I'll do is I will do the same set of steps again. Okay. All right. Now again, I'm going to start from, creating a session, creating a transaction, and evaluating the transaction. Okay. So, okay, let me first, I'm the same user. I'm going to use the same user information, just a new request from the same user. Okay. So I have a new request ID again. Okay. So now I'll copy this request ID real quick and put it into the transaction data. Okay. Again, I'm going to make a request of 500 or more payment transaction, and I'm going to put the new request ID there. Okay, this is my second request to make another transaction for 550. Okay, right, so I'm going to make that call. All right, so now, okay, now we have a transaction ID saying that, yes, okay, we have got your data. This is your ID for the transaction. Move ahead. Okay, so now, but before the user can commit the transaction, the application is going to make a call to evaluate the transaction. Transaction ID is one more than the last one. Okay, so now I'm going to make the call to evaluate the transaction. Okay, so here we need to update the request ID, the new request ID, right? Now the result is different. Now the result is block. What is the reason? User request seems to be similar to previously classified fraudulent request. I mean, this is something that you can customize. You can have your own message there. It's something that we choose for this demo environment. Okay, so what has happened now is, let me go back to the OARM console and continue from there. Okay, so okay, now I'll go back to the OARM console, and So we have, for apart from user authentication, as I have told at the beginning, I mean, when we started off with the OARM console, we saw that we have a custom activity, which is like a payment transaction. So we have created this payment transaction for this particular application that we just saw. Okay, and for that we have created a couple of rules here. Okay, now one of those rules is that this one, right? So if a request is more than a request of the request amount for the transaction is more than 500 and it happens within 5 minutes, then it needs to be blocked, and which is what we basically saw in the demo here, right? So let's go back to the user sessions tab again. You can see this is the blocked transaction that we just did a few minutes ago, right? Why was it blocked? Because of this particular rule. Okay, what was the action? Block, and then you can see the alert that we have just seen in our console as well, right? So in OARM, you can integrate OARM with your applications to analyze the contextual data when users are being authenticated into the application, and also to monitor transactions happening inside the application. Okay, so with the traditional capabilities of Oracle Access Management, right? Adding on Oracle Advanced Authentication and Oracle Adaptive Risk Management Services gives you these additional capabilities. Okay, and I'm pretty sure what you have seen here using these capabilities, a security posture of a web application can be enhanced further by many folds, right? So that is the end target here, to give you a glimpse into what OARM can do on top of this traditional authentication capabilities of Oracle Access Management, right? And I hope we have, in this session, we were able to get a glimpse into the capabilities of OARM, right? So now going back to the slide deck here. So as we have discussed in the beginning, we have seen how OARM, Oracle Adaptive Risk Management Microservice, can be used to evaluate the contextual data that is available when users are being authenticated into the application, and also to analyze transactions happening inside the application. So at the end, again, I thank you all for attending this session. Hope we were able to give you a glimpse into the capabilities of Oracle Adaptive Risk Management today. Thanks to Ricardo Gutierrez for giving us this environment for the demonstration purposes. Okay, and I hope you guys have a good time exploring the capabilities of Oracle Adaptive Risk Management. Right? Thank you and have a great day.